South Africans are hoping for more from President Cyril Ramaphosa's speech in dealing with the ailing economy, with unemployment, corruption, governance and public accountability when he delivers his SONA later on today. Critics have already said South Africans should brace themselves for more empty promises, unfortunately. Today, we have some young people in studio to share their views on what they think South Africa's developmental agenda should be beyond events such as SONA for a functional and economically stable South Africa. Let me introduce you to my guests. A familiar face to Morning Live, political analyst Jamie Mighti, Hermann Pretorius, he's a writer at the Institute for Race Relations, and Khanyi Magubane, who is a political analyst as well. Great to have all three of you. Welcome.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, so I in the introduction began by saying that critics are already putting it out there that South Africans should brace themselves for more empty promises. Jamie, is that a bit harsh, or what do you think?
I think it's fair to say that because the trend in the ANC State of the Nation addresses has been that they've moved away from detail. If you read the State of the Nation address, the 2000 State of the Nation address that Thabo Mbeki gave, or some of the ones that Nelson Mandela gave, they would actually report back on stuff that happened the previous year. He would say, we mentioned this was an issue in labor. We have now passed this legislation. These are the economic stats. For instance, Thabo Mbeki would say that between 1990 and 1994, the economy grew at an average of 2.5%. But from 1998 to 2000, it grew at 6.5% on average. And the projections were for 2000 that it would grow at that continued rate. But now, when you fast forward to 2020, we're looking at an economy that's projected to go at 0.9%. So the politicians are running away from statistics, they're running away from detail, and that's why this particular speech has lost its substantive value, because it has become, this is the theme, these are the national values, look forward for us doing some summit, some conference, some plan, some policy. It's always a policy, a plan, a summit, a discussion. It's very seldom an actual substantive thing that you can measure 150 days in.
Yeah, I mean, I think along with a lot of other South Africans, we're wanting to hear, this is what's going to be done. We start in construction on that on this day. This is the timeline. These are going to happen. No more discussions. They're actually, South Africa has no time for discussions anymore. It's time for action.
You know, Leanne, I think the president is going to deliver one of his most difficult State of the Nation address yet. I mean, over and above just reporting back to the nation, he also needs to show us that he is in touch with what's happening in the country right now. And, you know, Jamie mentions politicians running away from statistics, and it's quite ironic that he gives his State of the Nation address in the very same week that Statistics SA released its unemployment statistics, and the numbers are bleak. I mean, if we just go through some of the numbers that were released, you know, Stats SA is saying that the unemployment figure remains at 29.1%. But perhaps what is most worryingly, and is that the 15 to 24-year-old age group, okay, these are the young people at the epicenter of the growing levels of unemployment. And what that tells you is that school-leaving young people who are now considered to be the labor force and the workforce are not getting into any spaces of labor. And each year, the schooling system is spewing out 150,000 plus matriculants every year are just getting into this stagnant economy. And so what's happening right now is that if you look at the 40 to retirement age, unemployment is not that bad, you know, because it's still the elders who were there when, you know, the economy was still stable or whatever the chance. But the epicenter of the youth right now are the most impacted by unemployment. And let's look at some of the sectors that are, you know, experiencing unemployment. It's the retail sector. Consumers are holding on to their money. They're not spending as much. So people in the retail sector and manufacturing are struggling, you know, because products are not moving, services are not moving. So we want to see, you know, if the president is in touch with what's happening. SAA is in trouble. SOEs, ESCOM is in trouble. We know that, you know, it comes back to our daily living, how we live as a country. Right now we are frustrated, and we want to see if the president has his pulse on the ground with what's happening.
Yeah, it'll be difficult for somebody to not see what's going on.
Absolutely.
Institute of Race Relations. Now, I mean, you always come out with the interesting articles, interesting perspectives. Sometimes you get people's nerves going here. However, Are you on the same page here?
Absolutely.
Okay. Talk to us
Absolutely.
about your perspective.
Well, I think my colleagues are absolutely right, and I think the most worrying statistic that we currently face for young people in South Africa is the 40% youth unemployment. It is absolutely disastrous because you don't only have current unemployment being a problem, incomes not earned, people not getting wealthier, you have a lack of upskilling. Most upskilling happens in the workforce. So if a young person enters the workforce, that means they're on a trajectory to gain skills, gain experience, and start earning better as they progress through the labour force. But the fact that we don't even have that entry level at this stage makes it not just bleak currently, it makes it a knock-on process that will see a lack of skills. And Khanyi mentions the matric results, and I think one of the most worrying statistics or numbers from our matric results is that you get about 1.2, 1.3 million grade 1s, and then all the way through matric, you get about 50,000 matrics getting mathematics with more than 50%. Now, if you're looking at a country where between 22 and 25% of the economy, of the employment sector is dependent on financial services, and you only have 55,000 or 50,000 matriculants every year coming out with maths skills above 50%, then that really becomes a problem for your financial services sector. And so these two things really are, I think, not ticking time bombs, but I mean a series of already exploding time bombs.
Well, it certainly is. And I mean, if you look at the when it comes to the budget, we look at the biggest chunk of the money goes to education. And I mean, we're piling education in, and yet I've looked at one of the front pages of the newspapers today, I think it's the Sowetan, are leading with a photograph of what a school in South Africa looks like. And to think that that gets the chunk of our money, what is going on? And you look at the people that are desperately seeking jobs. They, the education is lacking.
Yeah, we oftentimes say it's the economy stupid, but I think that we need to actually say it's the education, right? Here are some of the data from the World Global Competitiveness Index. Our country ranks right now in the skills of the future workforce at 107 out of 141 countries. So basically, people are saying to us, you don't have sufficient preparation for the skills of the future. When you look at the teacher-to-pupil ratio, we rank at 109 globally. We spend all of that money, but we're not doing well. And this is why I think one of the biggest criticisms towards this particular president is why has he failed to deliberately take on education challenges head on? There's a war room for ESCOM. There's a war room for SAA. Where is the war room for education? We cannot continue to act as if everything is normal in the education sector, because it is patently obvious to everybody that something is wrong there. And it's easier to fix education than it is to fix the problems at ESCOM, because the infrastructure takes a long time to maintain, rebuild, and re-equip. If you go for nuclear, that's a 20-year downstream plan. But with education, you can go into the classrooms now. But the president has kept the same minister we've had since 2009. The programs are the same. We are ranking right now at 111 on critical thinking skills being taught in our classrooms. And in a 4IR dispensation, you cannot be ranking that low, spending most of the money that Africa spends in terms of comparative to GDP on education. We're not getting bang for buck in that sector.
Yeah. All right. So we've got to wrap this up. We're heading into the news, but let's get it to each one of you. We might continue. Your priority tonight, if there's one thing that you want to hear come out of the president's mouth, what is it?
His plan to stabilize the country. I need to hear specifics in terms of what are they going to do, just some of the touch points that we've mentioned here today. Less narrative and rhetoric, and more specific points. We know that Tito Mboweni is going to deliver his budget speech, in a week's time or something. But from the president, he needs to take us back into our confidence. Ramaphosa is gone. Tumamina is gone. The honeymoon phase is quickly gone. We are now in the thick of things. He needs to give us specifics. How is he going to get out of, what somebody recently said is a mess called South Africa?
That scares me. That's a really harsh way of looking at it. We're actually going to continue our conversation after the news, so I can quickly come to you and just ask you the same. That one thing that you want to hear from the president tonight, what is it?
that we're not going to continue spending money we don't have and saddling our youth with unpaid debts or unpayable debts in the future. We're going to tackle the problems, we're going to work with stakeholders, and we're going to stop, for example, making it difficult like for people like Itumuleng, the sandwich king, to make a living selling sandwiches on the street of Joburg, seeing a need, addressing a need, delivering a good, delivering a service. That's a young man inspiring people, and yet the government is making his life more difficult and not easier. And I want the president to say, we're going to give young people the opportunity to get the education, but to participate in the economy, and we're going to remove obstacles that are currently in their way.
All right, I'm going to pause the conversation. I also want to get your views on the calls yesterday saying that 2020 must be the year of orange overalls. I want to hear what you have to say about that. So, yeah, do stay put. We'll wrap up this conversation with our guests in a short while, but I just want to bring you our news at 7.